Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending. This is the workshop on fear inventory. And I want to start us off with a little tiny piece of writing that came to me yesterday. When we are scared, we have opened the door to mystery, the truth of the universe. Don't reject it. Be proud and look at it with shyness and dignity. Okay. So my name is Moritz, and um, everyone on the call already knows me, but I have been on my sobriety journey for the last 12 years. I'm 12 years sober from alcoholism and 6 years from nicotine. Um, they both had their own really challenging journey of their own, both very different things that came up for me. And especially, I would say that every substance that I have been in relationship with was a specific crutch or a specific mask for um, a specific malady that I was dealing with at that time. And my belief is in order to overcome any form of addiction, we have to understand it. We have to build a relationship with the thing that this is masking. Now, I hold a regular sobriety call, and whenever this sobriety call starts, I go into the definition of what addiction is for me, because a lot of people, when I speak about addiction, they kind of like a little bit set aback because they're like, oh, I'm not an addict, or I don't have addictions. But the way I look at addictions is in a much broader sense. And ultimately, when I speak about alcoholism, what I was addicted to wasn't actually alcohol, it was the brain chemistry that got triggered when I was drinking alcohol. And that's the same for when we doom scroll. That's the same for when we are in relationship patterns. So, for example, codependency or people pleasing, or even just being in relationship with someone who's actually not good for us, and we break up and we might be separate for 2 weeks, but then all of a sudden these feelings creep up and we think to ourselves like, maybe I should call him, like it was all not maybe that bad. Like the reason why that happens is something that I call the mental blind spot. And it's our brain's ability to basically erase everything that wasn't good. And all that's left to us is the good times, right? And this is really how drug addiction works too. Like the brain removes everything that's negative about it, and all the stuff that had us feel good all of a sudden becomes very tempting and um, very appealing. Now, the minute you re-engage with the thing in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, they always talk about the allergy, and the allergy is literally a abnormal response to whatever we are addicted to. And with alcohol, this allergy looks like for most people, they drink a beer or maybe two or maybe three, and then they feel full and they're like unsatisfied. For a addict, for an alcoholic, they drink three beer and they're more thirsty all of a sudden. And that's the abnormal reaction. And if we take this to relationship, for example, is we have done a thing 1,000 times, and still it seems that our blind spot gets us to the point where we forget how it got us into the worst scenarios, but then we pick it up because it all of a sudden seems like a good idea again. And the moment we pick it up, it enrolls us in a feed, in a repetition that we cannot break ourselves from willpower. And you might have noticed this yourself. Like you might have been like, I don't want to doom scroll anymore. But then all of a sudden, 2 days later, you find yourself like in the same cycle. Or in relationships, I don't want to argue with my person anymore. but then you find yourself in the same cycle. And this is really down to the brain chemistry that gets triggered. We forget, and then we are just rolling in the same dopamine, adrenaline, cortisol, whatever it is that gets us going. And one, for example, that I'm working with right now really strongly is workaholism, like the addiction to constantly make ourselves be busy. Then, like Corey lets me think of this one. I used to identify as an artist, and that one was a really difficult one to break, actually, because there's also identity addictions. And identity addictions is, for example, the rescuer and savior mentality. We always have to take care of everyone around us. Like that is an addiction. Or that we identify with, I am an artist, like I have to be a certain way. Like that can also turn into an addiction because they make us feel a certain way, and they help us shield ourselves from things that we don't want to feel. I don't want to feel like just this world is like superficial. So like for me, the artist identity was something that I could separate myself from, that feeling of like that mundaneness out there. Yeah. So that's me. My sobriety journey is going to be a journey for life. There's always going to be something that my mind and my brain will find to obsess about. And this this work, this fear inventory, is something that has been with me for the last 12 years and has been an incredibly powerful tool to identify what's really happening underneath. So let me see. I want to share my screen. I have two more short readings for you to get us into the right mood, and then I want to hand it back to you guys and hear from you. Oh no, hold on. That's not the right one. This is my notes. Stop. Where is it? Let's just do my desktop. Yeah. Okay. Can you guys see this PDF fully? Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So I want to start with a prayer. So you can read it with me. Really feel what this prayer is telling us, and what state it puts us in. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Okay. So you may replace the word alcoholic with a descriptive word of your own choosing. And something that works always is person. Okay, you can always say, instead of someone, like in this, some of these references I'm referencing from the AA Big Book. It's the key text of the Alcoholics Anonymous program. And you can always read this text, and instead of alcoholic, you just say person, or whatever you choose to say. When you read alcohol, you can replace the word alcohol with whatever you are struggling with, whatever you feel is your thing that your mind likes to obsess about. It works just as well. And then also another thing that I want to preface here is sometimes people get a little bit knocked back by the word God. Okay, and you may replace this concept of God with anything that you desire that is bigger than you, bigger than your own ego and this little bubble, because it really is about addiction is about obsession. We obsess about something, and who's obsessing? It's me. And in order to figure out my life problems or the things that I struggle with, I will um, I will get stuck in obsession, and that obsession is really what keeps us stuck with it, because I, at my own devices, am not able to control certain things that are much bigger than me. So, what is fear? The AA Big Book frames fear as an evil corroding thread woven through the entire fabric of the alcoholic's existence. It notes that fear is bracketed along nearly every resentment, meaning fear and resentment are deeply connected. Fear is not a separate problem from selfishness and self-centeredness. It is one of its primary expressions. So basically what fear is the ego's mechanism when it relies on selfhood to figure something out, and we reach our wits' end. Okay, then fear becomes the thing that stands in that place. So I'm right now in a really difficult situation with our land, and the county is putting pressure on us, and there's a risk of losing it. Maybe I'll get through it, or maybe I don't, right? And it becomes this David and Goliath story, right? It's this huge force against me, David, like the little guy, right? And now, as long as I try to resolve this on my own devices, on the power, the limited power of Moritz and limited, the limited power of my own brain, I will create fear. And fear is to stand in where I am getting to the end of what's possible. So this is why the concept of God or something bigger comes in here, because we have to find a way that we anchor into something greater, into a stream where we can take on this big Goliath, and an energy that carries us through this whole challenge. Okay. All right. So let's do an introduction. I want to hear from you guys. Go around and share your name and what raised your curiosity about this workshop. What stood out to you when it comes to fear and resentment that had you join today? Brooke, do you want to start? And then we go to Corey.
Yeah, I can start. Um, so it's just relevant to what I've been working on, what's been coming up for me lately in my personal growth and work and relating. I've just been becoming more aware of like codependency and those patterns and the ways that my brain seeks those comfortable, familiar places, and how I like sometimes just how it kind of just like keeps me in this loop. And I'm very self-aware. I'm like always doing my work, and I still like have struggled with like finding myself in familiar patterns, behaviors. And I'm aware that it's because there's like um, brain chemistry, there's like a familiar state that goes along with certain experiences. And I think it's just becoming aware of that as a part of my, it's like a becoming more conscious to what is creating my experience. And I liked, I just have liked what you've been sharing. And it's, yeah, having you in my life has also supported this awareness. And yeah, I'm grateful for that. And fear is something that I'm very familiar with. Fear is very much a part of my experience. So, um, yeah, I would like to. I am starting to develop a different relationship with fear, but it seems like this is could be a good tool to have a different relationship with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Or you want to share?
Yes, I'm Corey. Um, I think what attracted me to this workshop is I used to do a lot of fear inventory. And I have done like some here and there over the years, but I've never really gotten into a really consistent practice around it. And a part of that was just like the way I was doing it, I wasn't finding like consistent partners to like practice with. So I kind of you know, wasn't doing it as consistently anymore. And I think, when you talked about like fear being like the self-centeredness, or um I think uh I've always been the type of person who's like really used to kind of, I'm going to handle things on my own, or I'm going to do things on my own type of, thing. And lately, this past year, I've been dealing with a lot of challenges with my family, and having to step into responsibilities that I just never imagined I would have to. And just like having to receive help from my family or rely on them for anything is it I is really growing me in a way where I'm just kind of like, it's uncomfortable, and it's also like I can't afford to be uncomfortable. Like I have to like move through the discomfort in order to, handle what needs to be handled. And I keep, bumping up against like all these different fears of like asking for help and all of this stuff. And I'm like, if you, and it's been like, oh, well, if you stay in that particular fear, this is not going to happen, or this is not going to happen. And having to just like, there's moments where I do it and I'll like, walk away from my phone because like I don't want to see the answers, or I'm like, oh, this is like a lot to ask of this person, because, my family has been quite disconnected for a long time. And yeah, it's just been, having to like move through fears. And then I noticed that there are moments where it'll be a particular like trying day of something, and I will just fall into like scrolling and just like I need to completely check out. Like I cannot be here because, it's like I'm on for like a certain amount of the day or time, and I'm doing something that really requires me to like push through all of this fear or trepidation that I'm feeling. And then I'm like, I just want to completely turn off and just like go into my phone, or go into some little project, or whatever I create for myself that will help distract me from all of this that's happening. And I like understand at the same time that what's happening is growing me, and all that stuff is for you. Yes, I understand that. But at the same time, I'm just, it's not a situation where I can like, pull away so easily. So I'm like expanding, and I'm like, I need to like kind of like just have like a moment where I'm just not doing anything, and it that's really what the pattern's been. And I do want to, you know, move away from the scrolling because I'm just kind of like at times it gets very, it pulls on my rest, or like I'm like kind of overwatching movies or TV or stuff like that, and I just like kind of exhaust myself. So yeah, that's pretty much.
Thank you so much. Um, all of what you shared is incredibly relatable and really a textbook description of what's happening there. It's we often are like feeling like my problem with this is so unique and so different, and it really comes down to the same pattern over and over. And you know, I appreciate you bringing out this piece one more time, like about the selfishness and self-reliance. And in the in the big book, there's a specific section where they speak about the self-reliance. And the way they speak about it is that like the alcoholic, the person, is kind of like someone who wants to do all of it. He's the actor on the stage. He also does the lights. He also writes the screenplay. And at the same time, he's also the audience, right? And that, if you think about this, right, as an analogy for what's happening in our heads when we come into these situations and we are literally taking on the responsibility for all perspectives, because we say something to someone, can you help me with this? And before we even ask for help, we're already calculating how they might respond and how they might have a difficulty saying no. And so I'm predicting their feelings, and I'm controlling the entire scenario from all aspects in order to like the control is there in order to produce a certain outcome. And that is literally one of the textbook definitions of what obsession is, and why obsession is the main struggle that we are dealing with when it comes to like recovery work. And another piece that you said is also great, and I want to speak about that for a moment in a broader sense, because you were saying, I know it's all for me. And it's so easy that there is a certain kind of protective mechanism that our mind has developed. And spiritual bypassing, for example, is one of them. It's actually in the definition of like the different addictions that I've written out. Spiritual bypassing is one of them. It's one of the ritual addictions that we are dealing with. And what that says is like, oh, it's okay, but I know I am on the spiritual path and this is all for me. That's one way that we actually keep ourselves from saying like, hey, something here isn't right. Like something here doesn't feel good. And another way, I spent literally 2 weeks posting about this, talking to people, inviting them, and I put a lot of one-on-one attention into this. I like try to stay away from like mass posts and stuff, and really work with the individuals, talk with them. And literally today, they're gonna all have a laugh about it when they watch the recording. I hear an excuse from every single person of why they can't come. And some of the most interesting excuses are like, I'm sorry, I cannot come because, and then some form of suffering comes in, right? Like, I am too busy. I have to take care of everyone around me right now. And it's literally like just fill in your addiction, and that goes there, and it's like it's a self-defeating disease almost, because I think Brooke said this thing, right? You can only show, what did you say? You can only show a horse the way to the water, but you can't make it drink, right? And I said in return, the problem is like, no, you can only bring a horse to the water, you can't make it drink. And I said, you can't even bring it there. Like the only thing you can say is like, there's the water, and the horse will respond, I am too thirsty to walk. That's literally what this is. It's like there's 1 million ways that the brain will say, I will do anything but look at the core reason why I'm suffering. And that's really unfortunate, like there's so many things in the way to really do this one simple step. Okay, let's see. I have a little meditation for you guys. So I invite you to just find a way to sit relaxed. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable with that. Take a big inhale and exhale. And with the exhale, you can always just like let it all go for a moment and really relax into your sitting, into being here. Give yourself a moment of not obsessing about something else, but just being here and present. And now I like to invite people to turn on their little inner movie screen. So you're sitting in front of a big screen, and when you ask a question into yourself, that screen will show you something. What is a specific area? You can follow this question and ask it to yourself. What is a specific area in your life where you are obsessing about things? Something that takes you out of control. Something that place in your life where you feel like you're David and you're working with Goliath. Just sit with that screen for a moment and see the situation play out. Where do you feel powerless here? Maybe it's a family member. They always do certain things and they frustrate you, annoy you. That's powerlessness. You just wish they would just do it differently. That's powerlessness. What is a resentment you have here about them? The resentment can be about a person, a place, or a thing. Resentment is usually you want it to be different and it's just not going to quite happen the way you want it. Okay, and then when you are ready and you feel clear on this, I invite you to open your eyes and write that down in a very simple one-liner. I am resentful at, and my example here would be Goliath for being so big and mean. Okay, it doesn't have to be sophisticated. And be like, I am resentful at my sister for not calling me and apologizing. Or at my boyfriend for not being good at planning. Okay. All right, you got that? Okay, great. Now, that was step one. Okay. Now we go to step two. Um, just for making sure that there's no confusion, the step one and the step two is not the actual steps of the 12 steps, if you are familiar with 12-step work. This entire thing is one specific step on the 12 steps, but I'm using the word step here in a different context. So you see on my screen that this is kind of like the template of how I write this. I'm resentful at Goliath for being so big and mean. Now underneath, now we go to the second step. List every fear. Simply write down everything you are afraid of. The book says to be thorough and hold nothing back. No fears too small or too embarrassing. Common categories that emerge from the text include fear of people, fear of economic insecurity, fear of losing something that you have, fear of not getting something that you want, fear of what others think about you or something, fear of being found out. Okay, that's just like being found out is about like lying. I'm lying or I'm trying to conceal something. Fear of institutions and fear of the future. Okay, so these are just like some general categories of fears that like generally uh, come up there. Okay, so um, take a moment and write that down for yourself. Feel what are the fears, and you can go really extensive on this, and especially in the beginning, you might go a little bit more extensive on it, and you might write a lot. Okay, but really, all you need most of the time is about five fears. And I'll show you in a moment how even those five fears are coming down to the same thing. And you don't have to share any of this, by the way. Like you can write down what you feel. No one's going to be forced to share anything. You're only invited. And if you're done, you can raise your hand for a moment so I see that you're done.
So wait, how many fears are we writing down?
Well, you can write down as many as you like. I remember when I wrote this the first time, I was so paranoid. I really wanted to make sure I get everything on paper, and I wrote like, I think 15 pages. And then my sponsor sat down with me and he's like, no, no, like you go and do the next part of this work and you will see it's all the same thing. But yeah, if you want to be thorough, you can write down as much as you want. Um, this is a practice as well. So like you will not need to get this right all at once. You can write this practice multiple times, many times. And the beauty of it is that the more often you write, the more you see that it always comes back down to some core fears for you. So we're just building awareness around those core fears and how they impact our life. So there's no need to like think that like I have to write this endlessly until the end of my life. Like you will gain some insights through this practice. That's the aim. And you will find ways how to give yourself over there to a higher power rather than control that fear.
Okay.
You done, Brookie? Okay, great. All right, well, let's do like one more minute and then you guys can take maybe like a break. Okay. Should I take a little break here? Does that work for you, Corey?
Yeah, I just have one more sentence.
Okay, great. Get your last sentence out. There will be lots of time. You can practice so much more at some point. And there's a second step to this. So, how many did you write? How many lines of this did you write?
I wrote 10.
You wrote 10. Okay, great. How about you, bro?
7 fears.
Okay, great. Awesome. That's not bad. I was like, this is gonna be like 25. All right, so here's my example, right? I'm resentful of Goliath for being so big and mean. Then I write, because I fear he will annihilate me, because I fear I will be crushed and embarrassed, because I fear he will take my wife. Okay? You can write because I fear at the beginning and then just like do that short. I should have probably maybe said that before, but anyway. Um, I'm sure you guys got it right already. Now, for each fear listed, ask honestly, why do I have this fear? The book points to a root answer for most of them. Self-reliance has failed. The alcoholic or the person has been running on self-will, and when that provides insufficient, fear rushes in to fill the gap. The question isn't just what you fear, but what it reveals about where you have been depending on yourself rather than something greater. Okay, so if I go to mine here as an example, so because I fear he will annihilate me, okay, then I ask myself, why am I afraid of that? Why am I afraid of being annihilated? Okay, so and then it comes to I fear that because I will feel alone. Okay, now I go to the next one. I will be crushed and embarrassed, right? Why do I fear that? I fear that because I will feel separated. And the last one, he will take my wife. Why do I fear that? I fear that because again, I feel alone. Okay. So you gotta like meditate on that one. This is a place where you want to feel that fear, the thing that you're afraid of, right? The thing we are afraid of is kind of like um if you feel into your body, into the sensations of your body when there's fear, what's really happening is like, I'm afraid of this, and so I'm doing this. Okay. He will annihilate me. It's like, no, don't annihilate me. Because if he does, right, I would be there. Like, I have to put myself into the place mentally of being annihilated, right? What if I allow that in? What am I? Right. And now I'm like, now I get this mental image, like I'm laying here, right? This giant foot of Goliath is over me and about to crush me, right? And how do I feel there, right? Like the feeling that I get there is like, oh God, it's me against Goliath. It's me on my side and I'm alone, right? And that is really the thing that I'm trying to avoid. So we have to actually let that feeling of aloneness in, okay, in order to be able to identify what is the fear working against. Okay, so that little inner meditation is that's a muscle that I'm building with this exercise. Okay, to see that, to be like really quick at like what is the fear. Ideally, I don't want to be writing this exercise my whole life, right? I want to be like so fast at this internally that I can identify fears at an instance and like step right through it, right? So that will lead me to I fear that because I feel alone. Now, sometimes, especially in the beginning, your your muscle to do this little exercise isn't maybe not as strong. And it can happen that it leads you just to another thing, right? I fear that. Oh, well, I fear that because then everyone around me will laugh about me. Okay. Now, if that's the case, you can notice that still that fear is still externalized. So if that is the case, ask it again. You can ask to each answer again, and why do you fear that? Okay, and why do you fear that? And usually you have to ask that at a maximum of 4 times, and you will get to a core fear. Okay. So go ahead and look at each one at a time and ask that question, and then fill it out and just write it next to it.
I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, like, how do you know? Because, like, I know, like, there are fears that are just, they're not real fears. They're just like kind of fears you're creating.
Mhm.
Um, but like, how do you separate that from like an actual, like, I don't know. I guess sometimes I think there are actual fears, like there are real things.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, aside from like something physically chasing you, but like, like how do you separate that in terms of like when you want to do something or take action on something, but there's actually a real fear that something in your life could be compromised or could actually be compromised. I don't know. I guess that's my thing with like the doing the fear inventory, because I guess there's a thing where like fear is supposed to be like this not real thing, but it kind of is. It's there for a reason. So I guess that's my question. Like, how do you separate those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. Hold on. I have a specific section in the book that actually speaks about this. That I want to read you, and then I give you also my own personal spiel on it. Here, okay. So here I want to read you this. What the book promises on the other side. If the fear inventory is done honestly and the spiritual step is taken, the book promises that fear of people and an economic insecurity will leave, that the alcoholic will intuitively know how to handle situations that once baffled them, and that God will be doing for them what they could not do for themselves. Okay. So if we encounter, there's plenty of fears that are um that that are there to protect us, right? Like we fear fire. Okay. Now, if I if I'm writing, let's say I have a little brother and he plays with fire, right? Okay, and that triggers that fear of me being annihilated by fire. Okay, I I'm not trying to get rid of the primal fear of fire. Okay,
Okay.
and that's dangerous. I'm not trying to root that out. That is a mechanism that is there for a reason. What I'm trying to weed out is when my little brother plays with fire, that fear has caused me to like to get into conflict with him, to get maybe extremely harsh, and then his reaction in return will be harsh back, and maybe he starts teasing me, right? Because he can feel that he has now control over me because of this, right? And what we're really doing is we're getting conscious of the real thing that's happening underneath, and then I can be actually grounded and have a relationship with my brother that teaches him, that is supportive, that again, like the fear gets removed out of my system, and I know intuitively how to handle this situation in order to be doing it, to have a different outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's not like, yeah, so you're not removing like the safety mechanism of like, yes, if you like jump off a building, you're gonna die, all that stuff, but you're
Mhm.
removing like, I guess what you're saying is like it can get into like an irrational fear and disconnect you from, the person that you're interacting with.
Yeah, what we are weeding out is obsession, control, and irrational behavior around these fears.
Okay.
Mhm. And also recognizing what can I control and what can I not control. Right? There's plenty of fears around natural catastrophe, right? And uh you can go and buy a inflatable rubber boat for the flood, and you can buy a fire extinguisher, right? and you can do all the things that you can sanely do in order to be prepared. But then there's a moment where, like, if you wake up in the middle of the night, bathed in sweat, and you're dreaming about like how the flood is going to wipe you out, and that's every night, you know, you are now in an irrational obsession trying to mentally control this thing that you have no power over.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it leaves us with more trust. It's like, okay, I have the fire extinguisher, and that's all I could do. And now I'm going to put this thing to the side. Right. And I have to hand it over to something bigger into a form of trust. Mhm. Any more questions? No? Okay. Well, then go ahead and look at each line and ask yourself, because, so I fear that because, and then write your resolute answer on the right hand side next to your current fear. Okay. All right, let's pause here and go to the next thing so that we have time to get through everything. So look at these, look at the ones that you've finished now, okay? And see what they coming down to. What do they have in common? So on mine, you can see it's alone, separated, and alone. Okay, and separated still. It's another It's another version of alone. The book connects fear directly to selfishness. Most fears, when examined honestly, are about the self. Self-preservation, self-image, self-interest. This step asks you to look at each fear and identify what self-centered need it is protecting. Is it, and here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 categories. Is it security, reputation, control, relationships, or sex? This mirrors the resentment inventories column asking what was affected. The same category applies here. So from 3, all the ones that I've identified with this particular one are alone, separated, alone. Okay. And this sense of alone, right, for me, that fits into the security section. Okay. Like, and you could be like, oh, is this relationship or is it security? Check in with your body from what place that is, right? Like, does it feel like a form of like anxious, like oh no, I'm alone and therefore I'm not safe, right? Then it's security. Or is it like, oh, when I'm alone, like I don't have that friendship, that relationship anymore, but it doesn't fit into like, if that relationship isn't happening anymore, it's not about me not feeling safe, but it's just me losing that relationship. Okay. So this is not as important, these categories, but they give you a good sense of like where this is coming from. And if you were to write a whole 12-step, which honestly I recommend every human being doing a 12-step at some point in their life, because it's just so incredibly enlightening of what's going on for you. This will be a next step that you take in order to create further depth and understanding of what your system is mostly dealing with. So do you guys want to share what did yours come down to? Was it one thing or?
I can share. For me, the basis is really just fear of being alone,
Mm-hmm.
and then underneath that is it's for because of security and a sense of control, mostly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great, good, nice job.
I did like three, but two of them have to do with just my uh I guess my reputation, how I'm perceived in the family,
Mm-hmm.
and then one is about being alone.
Awesome, great. Yeah, self-image, right? This one, that one's a really strong, powerful force over us. Good job. Okay, so now you can just ponder a little bit over what you just done. You're welcome to revisit your inner movie screen and ask yourself these few questions. Who do I become when I believe the fear and control the outcome? How do I show up? What conflicts do I cause? Who have I been hurting doing that? Now, the book offers a specific direction after the fear is identified and examined. Rather than fighting the fear or analyzing it further, the instruction is to ask God to remove the fear and to direct attention towards what He would have you be instead. The book says, pray with me. And you may close your eyes again. And I want to invite you to not use these prayers as some empty sentences that we just recite, but instead use them as a meditation. Use them as a prompt for your movie screen to show you what you need to see. So we go, God, I ask you to remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. Now, this directed attention may again be seen on your little inner screen. At once I commence to outgrow fear. This is the pivot from self-reliance to reliance on a higher power, which is the spiritual solution the book offers to what it identifies as the fundamental spiritual problem. Okay. Do you guys want to share anything, what you received there? No one has to. You can also pass. So it's all fine. I understand this is a vulnerable process. Should I carry on? Right. The book says, so now the next step is read and share with a trusted friend. The book says this, the fifth step requires admitting to God, to yourself, and to another being the exact nature of our wrongs. The key word the book uses is exact, not a general confession, not a summary, but specific contents of what you have written down. Why a person is non-negotiable. The book is quite firm on this. It says that those who skip this step almost inevitably drink again. Its reasoning is that a solitary self-appraisal is not enough, that the alcoholic or the people are too skilled at self-deception to be trusted to do this alone. It says, we think we've done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. They're stout about that. Who to tell? The book suggests someone who will keep a confidence, so confidentiality. Fully understand what you're doing and not try to change your plan. It mentions a clergyman, doctor, or close trusted friend. It specifically cautions against choosing someone who might be hurt by what they hear. Okay, so here's my personal viewpoint on this one. So first of all, okay, this is kind of like this is holding a container. If you're at the receiving end, you're holding a container for a person. So we hold the container with confidentiality, okay? You do not have to do anything about what you're hearing as the person receiving it. Like it can go in here and it can go out there, okay? If you desire to feel the other person, of course, it has a certain kind of spiritual value to you. So you might want to lean in. But what I'm saying is there's no requirement. In fact, I actually disencourage that you do anything there. There's no coaching that's happening there. There's no advice giving. All you do is listen and then you say, thank you so much. And that completes the container. In fact, I've spent years in a community that would like practice this extensively, and we would read it to each other. And I've seen it countless times that like someone sits there and at the end is like, by the way, may I give you some feedback on your inventory there? Okay. And I guarantee you that's the last time that this person is going to read you an inventory. It creates actual harm, like doing that, because this is something very personal. The person is already doing the only thing that's necessary to do, which is get it on paper, get aware, and hand it over to God. That's all that's needed. There's no advice necessary. Now, if you are a therapist or you work with others, okay, you can take them through this process. You can show them how to identify these things for themselves. You can ask them like the questions like, what are you afraid of, right? Like, why do you fear this? That's a curious question that you can use in order to just help someone deepen the process. But if someone comes to you and just wants to share that, it's you don't want to, even in that moment, there's a risk you take if you step in as a coach, right? Because you're already inside the container. So if there's a repetition of like the way I would handle this, and you notice that a certain person might not actually get to their core fear, right? Let it happen in that moment. Just say thank you, great, good job, right? Like now rip that thing up. Like we always like rip it up at the end, or you can put it into a fire bowl and burn it if you want to have a little like ritual of letting that shit go. Um, and if you notice that someone is kind of like stuck at a certain level and they don't go like to the full length of the inventory, at some point, not during the listening, not while the container's open, next time they ask you, you can be like, hey, like, are you interested in taking this a little bit deeper? I might have like some insight for you. Are you open to that? And then receive a clear yes or no. That's a way that you can offer support there without risking that you are putting the person into a position where they don't feel safe to share with you anymore. Yeah, and then the other side of this is I'm someone I'm I think I have high level of terror inside me that like people are not just going to receive my feelings, but that they try to fix me or rescue me or like judge me there. So there's a tendency when you have that you don't want to read this to another person. And I really, over the years, have come to like realize that the sharing, the admitting, and the getting vulnerable is really what is the last required step where we start to actually open our system to that new vibration that we actually need to embody. Like I notice that when I don't share things and don't admit to like that shift that I want to do to another person, I kind of like tend to hold it on. And the protection to like stay where I was kind of like stays intact. And especially if I have a conflict maybe with my wife, right? And I've been grumpy for a long time. And now I'm realizing like that's a pretty selfish thing to do and I should change my attitude. If I don't make a form of admission and be like, fuck, I didn't show up right there, I don't open my system all the way. And I will most likely come back in and there's going to be a guardedness around that. And I'm still holding on to the grumpiness because now I'm ashamed that I have been grumpy, which keeps me grumpy. So it's an important step to take. And especially here in this community that I'm building here, we meet every Monday for morning practice. And I hope to encourage that people start building this practice and reaching out to each other because it's an incredible community building tool. Okay. Yeah, and then here the last page on the PDF is just a complete overview over what this inventory should look like, and you can download that in the classroom. And that's it. That's how you do fear inventory. Do you guys have any questions left?
Um, so once you've identified the root fear,
Mhm.
then the practice is to be able to sit with the actual root fear, to acknowledge it, to be able to feel it, right?
Mhm. Is there more?
And then and then to ask a higher power to to have the intention to release the fear and then to give it over to something larger. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I see with the example of being alone, and I want to control the world in order to never feel being alone. I'm asking a higher power to remove my fear of aloneness. Now, if I really humbly give myself to something bigger here, and I ask it to remove this fear, there's a process of connection that starts to happen. And I feel it in my body, and I may pray for the have to pray for the willingness to give myself to God in that moment. Right. And that is that courage that we receive in that moment to be like, it's okay. I can step into this. I will not be just met with devastation and terror in this feeling of in the situation when I'm alone anymore, but I'm not alone. It's me and my higher power. Right. And this may take some time, right? Like this may take some practice to really learn and understand how can I step into these places and trust something bigger. And over time, it will give us an idea that there is a reason why we need to step into this. There's a greater gift available to us. And that is really what develops this relationship with a higher power to be like, oh, you're bringing these places to me, not in order for me to shrink away from them, but for me to embrace them, to go into them, because the gifts of God, they are to be received in those places. And they are dark. Sometimes they appear dark, but that's how we bring the light into the darkness. Well, then there is no more questions.
So are so in this community, are people already reaching out to do inventory reads with each other, or is that something that is going to be encouraged, or like, do I just reach out to someone in the community and ask, or are people familiar with this practice in this community, or is this something that's just building at the moment?
Yeah, great question. So it is something that's building at the moment because this is the first workshop that I'm teaching on this. So we have been during morning practice between 3 and 5 people, and this workshop is the beginning to me starting this practice to like hold that piece of practice at that Monday morning. Um, we always start with shaking, then dancing, and then a meditation that is specifically designed for very creative and feminine people to have a place where they distill like their calling for the day, and then it creates a structure for your day. And then we will start writing fear inventory there too. And yeah, you can just reach out to someone, and there's no need for giving something in return. It's just like, hey, would you be willing to read my fear inventory? And that request, I think, should be simple. Like it's just like, yes, or no, right? And if it's a yes, like get on the phone, read the thing, and be like, thank you so much. And then you guys hang up. That like you don't build like an expectation that like now you are have to be staying stuck for 10 or 15 minutes for small talk, right? Like if that is something that you want to like ask, like, would you like to stay 15 minutes to talk? And then again, wait for yes or no. That way we can like cultivate like a culture of creating clean containers where there's no obligation involved. And for right now, I would say if you guys want to jump on the phone or text each other to read the inventory, you could do that with each other. And yeah. And I hope that I will. I mean, my intention is I look at this community as a long game, and I want to cultivate like a large group of people in there that will eventually practice with each other. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's do a round of this is something I'm taking away from you. And we'll close it.
Something I'm taking away is the piece about like when you do the inventory, like just writing um like what are you afraid of? Like if it's a loneliness or separating or the self-image. Because what I was doing before, I really wasn't doing that. I was just kind of like doing the fears and then saying the fears to someone else and then ripping it up, and that was pretty much it. But I don't think I was, necessarily going really deeply into it. So that's another piece that I'm, taking into the practice, is actually kind of going through them and looking at like what's actually happening underneath.
Yeah, that's great. I used to write it like that too.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a particularly effective way of writing fear inventory. That's why when I first did this version with my sponsor, because fear inventory does come from the AA program, and I don't know why it got watered down in the place where we learned it into that version where you just endlessly write I fear, I fear, I fear. I think there was something that like got lost in the transmission. And when I did it the first time with my sponsor, he was like, okay, no, 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 that's enough, right? And he like led me to look at the individual pieces. And I had such a breakdown at that moment, like breakthrough in that moment, because I was like, this makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corey, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Mhm.
Well, this is a very I mean, aside from just being aware of my fears, um, this is a new practice for me.
Mm.
So I think it can be a useful tool for me, like in my morning journaling, and just all the things that come up, all the fears that come up, a way for me to build a deeper relationship with it, and also to get out of the self-oriented selfishness piece. I think could be super helpful. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you both for supporting me here and showing up. It's great. I love people coming live. If everyone wants recordings, then these are not possible. So have a beautiful weekend and maybe see you in the practice or other places.
Thank
And oh,
you.
last thing, if you are interested in understanding a little bit more about the obsession and about how addiction works, you've already now got a school account, and in the classroom is something called the Sobriety Mastery. And there's a bunch of videos that I created that are really powerful in understanding those specific dynamics. And they all free. So enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye bye.